there are kind of two strands to the story kind of so far, where so you have the traumatic experiences at the beginning, in the spoken word piece at the beginning of 7. You say money, resources, these are things I've never had a lot of. Due to my lack of them, I know how to struggle and overcome. I know how to continuously stand and fight in the face of endless torment. So in the mode of being ready to stand and fight, in the fight mode, so which is like a trauma response.
Which is kind of where the few times where in my life the parts that were actually me shined through.
Yeah, because there's this assertiveness
that has to come along with being your true self.
Right.
And it was very hard for me to access that, and I would let everyone around me decide for me who I was. I would let people's things that they said about what I could or couldn't be inform me. I took everything personally. That was the other thing. A part of my trauma was that I just completely internalized everything everybody had to say. So whether it was an extreme praise or something negative, I would just wholly internalize that. And most of the things that got said to me were not good. So I walked around with this. Yeah, part of my PTSD is that something I work on with my therapists a lot. It's called core fuels. And I struggle with this feeling all the time that I'm like one of the biggest pieces of shit in the world. And no matter what I do, and no matter how hard I try, I've done a lot of treatment, I've been on medication, I've been whatever.
Yeah.
It's just something I always have to deal with and something I always have to rub against.
No matter how much evidence there is that you're sappy and loving.
No matter how, whatever. So a lot of the time that I spent until probably the age of 24 was all just an autopilot, being controlled by this core fuel that I'm a piece of shit and trying to appease everybody else and trying to find validation and love in people outside of me, because I didn't feel love. I didn't feel love from anybody, and the people that did show me loves, it was so toxic and so codependent that I didn't understand how to healthily love or feel healthy love.
Yeah.
So during a lot of that, I just didn't have anywhere to be myself. So the times when myself would come out was in those 24 years of being an autopilot, was all of a sudden in these like shining lights of like more or less like, am I allowed to cuss?
Yes.
In a like, fuck you.
Right.
Like, get the fuck out of here. Like this shit that you're imposing on me, the shit that you're saying to me is just like not real. I'm actually like way more in tune and on the path of what this music's really supposed to be about than anyone's letting on. And then people, like, when I would start to have that, they'd be like, oh, you're too excited, you need to stop, and they would immediately just try to whatever. And
no
like
enthusiasm here. Please.
Yeah. And it's like it's the Curb Your Enthusiasm. And I love that. I love that show. I love that show so much. But it's like, man, if you lived the life that I freaking lived and had to deal with the kind of crap that I had to deal with, you'd be super enthusiastic to be where I'm at too, or be having these opportunities, or being whatever.
To be able to work with
even
music.
Converse with the people who I was conversing with, even whatever,
Yeah.
And
so you feel the meaning of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of the people I was around just took that for granted, and I mean a lot of
like,
the truth is today, man, like a lot of the jazz culture, a lot of the people who identify themselves as jazz musicians are like rich white kids whose parents paid for all of their education their whole entire lives, and who go and play jazz gigs at whatever club and then go and live with their parents afterwards.
Right.
Or
rather than having the soulful connection.
Yeah, man. It's all this heady stuff. It's all this cerebral, like, oh, here, look at, like, like how this crazy rhythmic thing I can do, or this crazy harmonic thing I do, or both at the same time, and like, oh, and because I went to school and I know about so and so artist, and I know this much about this guy, and I've transcribed this solo or whatever, that means that I'm better than you, and it creates this like whole elitist like vibe, and I'm like, I'm just not about that, and I never was.
Yeah, that's obviously counter to connection again, and we end up with a situation where it's just if someone just practices how to recreate something enough, then they get to be in the club.
Exactly, and I mean, like, and again, back to it, I do all that stuff.
Yeah, you can. That's a part of it.
That they are yelling at me that I don't do well enough or whatever. Like, I do.
It's just not the core.
It's just not what I'm gonna come out and release under my own name.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm gonna do as a leader. As a sideman, or I mean, like, and still to this day, I play solo jazz guitar. You'll hear me play standards. You'll hear me play all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the attitudes and the conservatism and the purism is highly antithetical to how this music actually gets made.
Yeah. Transcendence is something that I think it would be good to weave in. But the end of that spoken word piece is, I know I'm not the only person that struggled and that transcendence doesn't come easy, but transcendence is where this journey begins.
Yes.
And I'm kind of bringing transcendence in because you were describing before, like being stuck in the trauma response, but then there's a way of like, a particular way of standing and fighting against something that you know to be unjust or incorrect. That you said that there is you would feel yourself in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in like the kind of timbre of that sense of connection to self, and then later, say once as an alternative to just like parroting, or doing what you're being told to do in that instance, then you're in the flow of creating, say, the music that we've been listening to,
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the place to be yourself, and you feel the connection with your soul, and then you know that you're this metaphorically you're sending this eye out, and people's hearts are being touched. So then that feels different, doesn't it? Is there a different sense of self?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, that transcendence, it was a slow process. It wasn't just what I mean by the journey started there was like, 7 was a story basically of the end of my drug addiction and running through the streets of Milwaukee at night, doing all sorts of things that kids, when I was that 14-year-old kids, 15-year-old kids should never be doing. Mm-hmm. And I mean, really, it's telling the story between the ages of 14 and like 17, 18, and getting slightly sober, like, Pride, like the last one about like, and the vibe there is like, oh, I've gotten out of this dark space and I can begin anew.
Yeah.
Well, little did I know that was just the first dark spot to get out of.
Yeah.
There was still a bunch of autopilot going to the age of 24, and the real transcendence happened. And really, I mean, to tell you the truth, the transcendence happened for me in a psychotic break. I lost my mind, basically, man, and ended up in a hospital.
Mm-hmm. Right before making that record.
Right before making 7, for a week, And the reason, I mean, a big part of the reason, and I can feel it till this day, because this stuff still shows its head once in a while. But the thing that I felt then was, and probably what led to me having such a psychotic break, was the real self fighting so hard against these internalized ideas, like formed by trauma of who I was. that, like, you know, when I finally broke away from that, it just messed up my brain because I didn't, like, this new self all of a sudden maybe that I was feeling, or this old self that I was peeling away. It just felt so scary. It was like, I can consciously, like, I mean, for me, it was like the way that I'm talking with you right now, the way that I can articulate my words. The way that I, prior to that psychotic break, the way that I articulated words, the way that I spoke, everything was just so much from this trauma, this other place, this former self. It was this autopilot.
Right.
And it was not conscious. It was not conscious. Like, it wasn't, I didn't really know what it was like to speak consciously. Until I was 24.
Yes.
And it was heartbreaking, man.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Overwhelming to be like, wow, this exists. And given that this exists,
I've been living this whole entire time. Not feeling that, and not being able to do that, and not being able to be in concordance with what I knew was good.
Yes.
For me and for the people around me, you know, and it was a lot of like, oh man, my self-judgment this whole time, this light that I've been, you know, told to shy away from and been, you know, forced to believe was unreal, was really the truth and the way I should have been living my life the entire time.
Yes, and now you find ways to, through creating this music.
Yes.
Yeah.
To be able to do that now, and that's what that transcendence is, and you know that's really where it came, and really where now I've been able. I'm still not perfect with words. I never will be. I feel my command over the English language is not anything nearly as good as someone like you, Simon. You're so good with words and, you know, putting things and whatever. But the language that I do have
Cody.
is music. Man, that's you know, that's how I can speak, and I feel like I speak way better via my guitar and via pen on paper and composition than I do with actual words.
I think let's have this interview kind of be an artwork sandwich.
Let's do it.
Because that was, I loved that at the beginning, like how we were able to kind of use this prompt as a kind of catalyst, and then you found the words to kind of tease out a lot what's happening in the music with the help of the artwork. So this is appeared on Instagram.
Yes.
So if people who were sleuths, you know, who wanted to.
People who are smart enough might have caught the little leak of what's to come next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, so this is the artwork for the
second single.
Which is just about to be released.
Yes, Outlier.
And what does this artwork reveal?
Well, I mean, a lot of what it reveals is when you finally get to hear the song. It's one of them that I don't solo on. So I'm really going with this term outlier because that's just the way I've felt for a lot of my career. It's the way I've felt in the jazz community that I've worked so hard to get some sort of approval from. I've always just felt like the outlier, and I feel why this does such a great job. So, like, back to the music. The music, I don't solo on it. The featured soloists are the bass and drums.
What are their names? We should probably...
Chris Bates, Abhinav Brahanu.
Yes.
Abhinav Brahanu on drums, Chris Bates on bass. World-class musicians.
Absolutely.
Absolutely just monsters. And, I mean, Chris Bates is lifeblood of the Twin Cities jazz scene. Abhinav's from the East Coast, originally from Virginia, spent a lot of time in D.C., and it's become one of my best friends, man, and I'm very grateful that he moved here and we've become so close. So really to me, the reason why I wanted to feature them as the soloists is because in the big scheme of jazz, they're kind of the outliers. You don't hear basses solo as much. I mean, you hear basses solo. It's traditional basses will solo, but like a lot of the time when the bass solo comes up, unless you're a cat like me, most people don't pay nearly as much attention.
Right.
When the drums start to solo, the same can be said. They're the outlying instruments. The featured soloists are usually the horn players, piano players.
Yeah. Or the electric.
Or the electric guitar.
Lead guitar.
Yeah, lead guitar. Like that's the solo.
Right.
Horn players, electric guitar, whatever. These instruments that sit over the top, sing really loud, whatever else.
Yeah.
So I wanted to feature them.
Yeah.
And then how that relates with the artwork is, if you look in the left and the upper right, left. Yeah, I got my lefts and rights together today. We're good. So on the left corner, you see that it's more very straight lines, very angular, and using the same colors that is in the rest of the picture. But then the rest of the picture is all, a little bit more sporadic, a little bit more less perfectly formed angular lines, square, and more just like brush strokes per se.
Right.
And I feel it really outlines the idea in picture of what it looks like to be the outlier. Because if anything, like, you could just consider that the straight ahead, not even the straight ahead, just all the BS, all the whatever, and all the stuff on the outside. Again, which is a bigger area to be in, and the truth is the reality.
Right. I could imagine this being like, this is jazz, and then we have the hip hop component. It comes in. And
That's genres sitting
exactly.
over here, and then here is the music.
Yeah, the actual, like, the map of the sonic territory, or the, rather than a map, even just the image of the territory.
Yeah.
Encapsulating this is where we are. Let's be where we are.
Exactly.
And experience where we are.
And exactly, this is where we exist today.
Yeah.
This is where we live. We don't live in a perfectly straight, everything's formed perfectly kind of world.
Yeah. Well, that's a part of it.
It's part of it. It's part of it. It's something we like. It's something we like to say, and we like to hope for, but we really live. We live in a world comprised of. I don't like to say that there's all sorts of shades of gray, because that's too simple for me. There is all sorts of shades of gray, yes, but we also, at the same time, there's also lots of yes and no answers. So we live in a world that's both all sorts of different shades and everything, but then also on an individual level, very much you either do or you don't.
Yeah, and I think the yes and the no relates to that assertive, like, willingness to fight and be like, that's like a hard no to this thing that you say is the truth and the whole truth. No.
Exactly.
I know that it isn't. So this, and it relates to, obviously, boundaries, effectively saying yes and no to things.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I love how, in terms of spirituality, in terms of mental health, I think it's really significant, like what you're choosing to do.
Yes.
With the music, and you're obviously aware of that, and that's wonderful. I look forward to future conversations. Will there be more Code 7?
There will.
The 7 Virtues, is that going to happen?
Yes, the 7 Virtues will eventually happen. Not sure when. It's on a burner, just on the back burner.
Yeah.
It's there. There's material for it. I'm just, right now, because of the trajectory, everything is going with the trio. It's going to kind of be...
Right that way.
It's kind of going to be the main thing, right, for a while. I have plenty of ideas for what I want to do for 7. And I for the next 7 record, it will be based on the 7 Virtues. And probably a lot. Well, not probably. It will be some of it will definitely feature larger ensembles. I definitely want to do something with a. I want to write a big band score for at least one of the tracks.
Awesome.
And
it calls for fullness, I think.
I think I think definitely some of it, without a doubt. And I'll still keep, and if the way the Cody Steinmann trio works, if you didn't catch with the first Code 7, the main thing happening throughout, the one consistent is there's always a jazz trio happening. There's it's either me on piano or me on guitar and then bass drums, and then everything else is just brush strokes.
And within 7, within Code 7, that's still the case. Yeah.
It's still just this, whatever, all the other stuff is just existing around that,
Yeah.
So this, the next 7 will definitely still have that as the core, but there's going to be also a lot more other things that instead of like being just brush strokes will be way more just like solid, strong statements.
Yeah. I like the visual metaphor still, instead of brushstrokes. How exciting. And so finally, is there anything in late October or beyond that you'd like to highlight? Any shows, opportunities for people to come and see the Cody Steinmann Trio?
There will be the dropping of the second single, which is Outlier.
Yep.
And I'm very, very excited to share that all with you.
Yeah, awesome. Yes, well, yeah, this is the visual representation of what's on the immediate horizon.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. If there's any upcoming shows, I'll include that info here.
Yeah. I just don't have any shows lined up.
Yeah, well, by the time this comes out, they will do.
Yeah.
So if
I'll text you and let you know.
There you go. And this has been a wonderful conversation. Not the first and certainly not the last conversation between Simon and Cody.
Definitely not the last.
To the next one. But for the time being, this has been Cody Steinmann. I've been Simon Calder. This is Back to the City. And thanks for going on this journey with us, viewers.